All right, friends, if you're listening to this episode, you realize it's a bonus episode, something special planned for you. And what that is my new podcast, Naked Sunday. My co host, Caleb Nelson, and I, you can hear all about our story in my book, Best Hour of Their Day, or the bonus chapters of Best Hour of Their Day. Long story short, best friends. Then we didn't talk for 5 years. Now we are just about best friends again, talking all of the time about really deep things, to be quite honest. We don't just have this surface discussion, although we do. We talk about working out and nutrition and what's going on in our lives, but often we found ourselves really diving into these deep, meaningful topics like forgiveness and authenticity and what it means to be a good husband and a good person, things we can do better. I'm just talking about some deep shit. I mean, especially for two dudes that are, you know, just in the fitness world, we get pretty deep. Not gonna lie, I'm proud of ourselves, but we've been having these conversations regularly, and we thought, hey, we'd love to have these conversations on a more substantial level, meaning we can actually help other people. And I think that's what we're going to do here with this podcast. Naked Sunday is going to be a podcast all about diving into these deeper topics and exploring them, talking about our feelings, talking about our emotions, giving out tips that have worked for us, and also talking about places we failed with these different topics and places where we think we can help other people improve their lives. That's really what it is. So if you're interested in that, there's of course a fitness and a nutrition vibe to it, but then we get much deeper. If you're interested in that, check it out. Listen to this episode. If you enjoy the episode, this is our introductory episode of Naked Sunday. But if you enjoy, head over to Naked Sunday on any podcast platform and give us a subscribe. I promise you, I think I said I promise you, but I'm pretty certain that if you like Best Hour of Their Day, you're going to enjoy Naked Sunday. And I'd love to have your feedback. So if you listen to this introduction, and then you, of course, subscribe over at Naked Sunday to get all future episodes, which will come out every Sunday, just once a week. I'd love your feedback. Hit me with an email, a text, a DM, whatever it is, however you and I communicate. I'd love to hear it. So listen to this episode. Let us know what you think. Subscribe to the show at Naked Sunday. Feel free to leave us a review as well. Of course, leaving a review always helps. But more importantly, hit me up with some feedbacks, future topics, and what you learned from this episode. All right, that's it. Go ahead, listen to it. I'm done talking. Here's the inaugural, the first episode of Naked Sunday with my co host, Caleb Nelson. I don't know about you guys, but the quarantine was not ideal for my eating and my physique when we first got locked down. I took it as a way to pity myself, feel bad. Obviously the whole world is going through this, but I took it as, hey, no, it's only me. We're all gonna die, so I might as well eat cookies, Chipotle, and pizza. And then you realize, okay, we're gonna make it through this. It's gonna take some time, but we're gonna make it through. Let me not eat like an asshole forever. And luckily, I'm married to someone who constantly reminds me that I'm eating like an asshole. Won't have sex with me if I don't look my very best. That's something I need a therapist about, but also runs a pretty phenomenal nutrition company with Own Your Eating. And she's put together, that is Roz, my wife, some great challenges that you guys can check out. If you're like me, like you said, and you need a little extra accountability, you need a kick in the ass, you want to just learn a little more, you want to do something really cool at your box, at your gym, at your affiliate, you should check these out. So if you go over to SugarWOD in the marketplace, we've got the Own Your Eating store in there, and there's 3 different challenges you can check out. If you're a box owner, I highly recommend you check out the Gym Nutrition Challenge. I think it's only like $169, something like that. And the cool thing about it is if you're a box owner, you can give this to your members as a way to just, hey, I'm giving you a bonus. I'm giving you something, we appreciate that you stuck with us during the quarantine. We appreciate that you kept your membership active, or you can even make money. She's had a few gyms that have done really well at $169. You get 20 people signed up at $20. you've made over $200. So check out the 30-day transformation challenge for gyms. That's a specific one for box owners. And then we've got ones for individuals, the 30-day transformation challenge, as well as the 30-day get lean challenge. And with both of those, you're going to get programming, you're going to get daily information, daily accountability, and so much more. The transformation challenge is really for those that are either new to tracking macros and flexible eating, or maybe you've done it in the past and you want to get dialed back in like I needed. And of course, accountability goes a long way. It's something I preach as far as a coach. I have coaches for many aspects of my life, and the primary reason is I just need that accountability. Hey, did you do what I told you to do? Hey, don't forget you said you do this, right? It's just a reminder in the back of my head when I'm about to mess up that I got someone out there that's relying on me doing well and going to remind me about it. And then there's the 30-day get lean. This is more for the experienced people. Maybe you've tracked macros in the past, you have a good understanding of nutrition, but you're ready to take it to the next level. Maybe you've plateaued, you're ready for reverse dieting, or you just need some extra coaching out there. So you can check these all out on SugarWOD. The link is in the show notes. But if you go to SugarWOD, you go to the marketplace, you look up Own Your Eating, you're going to see these options. And the cool thing is you can use the code BEST HOUR. You can use the code BEST HOUR and you'll get 10% off any of the options there. So BESTHOUR. The code BEST HOUR will get you 10% off in the SugarWOD marketplace. Check it out. Own Your Eating. Roz's 3 challenges, and she's seen tremendous results. And trust me, if you're working with Roz, I'm going to hear about it. She'll ask me for some feedback as well. So you really get 2 coaches for the price of 1. Check it out. Use the code BEST HOUR for 10% off.
All right, guys. Welcome to episode 1 of Naked Sunday. I'm your host, Caleb Nelson, and I'm here with my good friend, Jason Ackerman, also the co-host of this exciting new adventure. Really excited to shake things out, see how things go. Not that we're shaking anything out on actual Naked Sunday, but we are recording on Sunday. So we'll do our general intros and then we'll get into it. Like I said, I'm Caleb Nelson. I've been in the fitness and training and we'll call it life coaching space inadvertently for over a decade now. And my good friend Jay here, I'll let you introduce yourself, bro.
Yeah, once we hit that record button and you started talking, I got a little bit of those good nerves going through. So it was like, all right, we're launching a new project, which I think is always exciting. I remember back in the day, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, when I would come back from a mentorship lesson, one of the very first ones he said is like, when you do something that's scary, you're also excited and it's invigorating. And that's kind of how it felt when we hit that record. Like you, been involved in fitness, health, life coaching for, hard to believe, 25 years. It's crazy. That just means I'm old.
You don't
I
have that
just,
many gray hairs.
I'm surprised I'm not going gray just yet. You know, 25 years just means, 1, I started really young, and 2, I never got a real job. So, but I think I think you and I have so much time under tension because it's something we're just so passionate about. Hence the launch of this. You and I will talk about our story on this episode, but as soon as we got talking again, it was like we want to. I feel like you and I just always want to share with the world.
I agree with that. I struggle not sharing at this point, and when I feel like the most worthless is when I don't feel like I can actually go out and help somebody, when I feel like just kind of confined to my own thoughts and like feel like I'm locked in my head. And when I don't feel like I'm actually helping, I feel like I'm like wasting my time on this planet. And, when we started talking about this, it's like we didn't even skip a beat. Like, yeah, shit, we want to do something again. We want to do something that was meaningful. I mean, we kind of had that makeshift podcast at Albany, and here we are now, hopefully a little older and hopefully a little wiser.
Definitely older, definitely older. And I think let's be real and let's be honest, because that's what this is all about. We also very much both like to talk. You know, we,
I can't say that I don't like the sound of my own voice. That would be a lie. So you're very right, and
but,
nobody accuse me of being short-winded anymore.
but for me, what really cemented the idea of doing this though was, and maybe we could talk a little bit our backstory. You know, you showed up in Albany Cross for what, 2010?
2009.
2009. Wow. 11 plus years ago now. And, you know, for those that want to learn more about everything we went through, you know, I wrote a book. We've talked about it on podcasts before, and it's probably, I'm sure if you just Google our names, you'll find our history somewhere out there. But point is, when you and I reconnected earlier this year, and I think it's important to note the fact that the reason we were able to reconnect is vulnerability and those types of, you know, things that we'll dive into. But really, every time you and I spoke, I would leave that conversation like a weight had been lifted. It was like a therapy session. You know, people just like talking and venting and getting, you know, there's, you and I are, at least in my world, you're one of the few people I can say something to and A, not feel judged, B, get some solid advice in return, you know, and C, learn a little bit. And I was like, man, this feels so good to me. We should be sharing it with the world.
Yeah, I mean, for one, the catharsis in and of itself was very powerful, and just even leading into it, it was an exercise. You're right, a very much a vulnerability of being able to say, here's my flaws, here's the things. Hey, I still miss you. Hey, I want to reconnect. And I like, kind of like you're saying, I'm at a place in my life where I truly value the few relationships where I can truly be open and and go into those situations without feeling like I have to like hold back from being like the real version of myself. Um, and I think there's a lot of people out in the world right now who struggle with that. They won't even take the first step in their life because they're worried about judgment or rejection or anything of that nature. So really, this project hopefully can inspire some people to realize like that's usually the answer. Be a little more authentic with yourself, and the right people and will come into your life. And the people that you don't need in your life, they'll quickly find their way out. But hopefully you can move into a space where you have a better environment, both with just the people that surround you, but also internally with yourself. And ultimately, we just wanted. I reflect a lot on legacy recently. Now, it's actually a big reason. Before I reached out to you, I was thinking about, if I died tomorrow, would I regret not having reached out? Would I have regretted not saying those few things and seeing like, was I all right? Was it all just in my head, or was there more to be learned? And I for one don't want to like leave this earth with malice in my heart, and not having patched up a relationship simply because of maybe some of my own stubbornness or some of my own ego. And again, hopefully this project can inspire many other people to mend some of those wounds, both with other people but also within themselves. And I just feel very grateful that we get to share this thing together. So um, it's going to be some good times, some really good times. I don't know where it's going to go. I think that's probably, you said it right before we hopped on here, butterflies and all that other jazz. And I said this it's actually, it is a true story as well, but I said it on a first date once. It wasn't with my first, wasn't my wife, but
Your first wife? Is that what you're about to say?
I was married before. Yeah, no divorces. I don't know why I said that, but I said it before. I said it before a first date once. That's what I was trying to say. I said it on a first date right as we were getting into the car. And I was like, I'm always nervous right before something great happens, and it's yeah, for whatever reason that always sticks with me. I'm not with that person anymore, but it was, it was a lot of great things that I learned from that situation. But
It's, you know, that's funny you say that because first dates are just so great to A, reminisce about, and B, grow with. I know for me, as I got older, first dates took an entirely different, you know, shape in my life. I remember being so nervous when you're younger going on a first date, and then to the point where as you got older, like you could be yourself and you can say things like that, like I'm nervous, but that's okay. And I learned, at least as I got older, women appreciated that. I remember, you know, kind of being meta, like it was a date with a mutual friend of ours, who's now married, her Jess, Coach Jess from Albany CrossFit, like long before Albany CrossFit. We went on like one date and we were sitting there and we were like, and I was like, this is a great first date, isn't it? And, I was a little bit older than her, so I can see her reaction being like, is this guy really saying that? And then it's like, wow, like that's okay that we can talk about these things. Like we can talk about, hey, we're on a date and we're enjoying ourselves, and it's okay to say that.
I agree. I think that, like you hit the nail on the head. I think as we get a little bit older, you stop giving a shit so much, and in a good way. It's like you care about only the few things that really matter, and being authentic is more important than anything else. And you're right. I think any prospective relationship actually appreciates that, and it's far more attractive when you are willing to just be real with yourself and with them, because I mean everybody at this in this day and age is expecting just a line of like garbage and just only bringing on like whatever, always putting on only a great face for everything, and not just being like, hey, I'm going to put myself out there just a little bit for you, um, and not being worried if they don't take it or not. Like, but ironically, increase your odds of them being like, cool, I'm in. Let's see where this thing goes. So
Yeah, and at 5'3", really 5'2.5" from my latest physical. I wasn't relying on my rugged good looks or you know being tall, dark, and handsome. So all I had going for me was this ability to be honest and I suppose vulnerable at the time. And hey, luckily for me, my first wife, my current wife, it it's worked out with her too. But and as we're talking about this, I kind of like we've both alluded to, this is kind of a, hey, let's record, let's see what happens. We've obviously thought about it a little bit. I think, and we're kind of talking about being meta, we're talking about the podcast on the podcast, but
yeah.
I think kind of having this one idea for the episode, whether it's, hey, how to be authentic, forgiveness, being vulnerable, having those kind of topics that we branch into on each episode, maybe even with something that the listeners can do at the end and we can even do. I mean, a lot of the times we'll be talking about it based on experience, but hey, I know there's more people in my life that I can offer forgiveness to and ask to be forgiven to. There's more places I can be vulnerable. I can certainly be more authentic. So I feel like it's cathartic for us. That's, by the way, a word that very much reminds me of you. You use all the time.
So that's why I started this one off with that. Made sure I dropped the an early lebism. Make sure that it's
I Levism. I remember when you used to say it, even back in the day. The first time I was like, I gotta look that up later. I don't know what that means. So,
crushed on the SATs, or at least the part.
so being this is kind of like the first episode, and when we want our listeners to understand where we're coming from, why don't you give the background on the name? Because a lot of people just assume right now these two guys are naked, sitting around on a Sunday, which may be part of it. But where did the name Naked Sunday come from?
Well, depending on if the camera is on, there may or may not be pants on. So yes, so there is actual like substance on a few different layers with this, but so I haven't shared it yet, but well, my wife posted a bit of a before and after picture, and you actually had a great before and after picture from a few years ago when you started on your eating. But within this past year, I've lost 35 pounds myself, and I actually just literally saw the picture from a year ago when I came back from my pseudo honeymoon. But over the years of since you and I had split and owning business with just myself and Ian, having it off on our own separate venture together, I definitely struggled with the same stressors that I feel like every other business owner eventually runs into, of time and worry about taking care of everybody and making everybody else a priority and just feeling strung out. And then I started leaning on more like food. In my late 20s and early 30s, I drank more than I felt like I consistently than I did in college, and I put on a bunch of weight. So I got over 200 pounds. I think the highest I touched at one point was 210 pounds, which, mind you, during the time you and I knew each other, I was 165 to 170, very athletic, trying to compete in the CrossFit world and all that other jazz.
Six pack.
Six pack, all that other jazz, and really definitely prided myself on, I could my shirt off and all that in a bag of chips, that kind of thing. Definitely a lot more egocentric than I cared to let on at the time. But during that, within our little fallout, and then subsequently some confronting a lot of my internal issues, and navigating my now, well, now I'm married to her with Lexi, I started to really explore like mental health and what that means to me and my own, internal struggles and my own spirituality and my own upbringing and everything to go along with that. And there came a point where like I used to, and like legitimately, I don't like wearing clothes. I feel like that's just very natural. Like you should just want to be naked in general. But there came a point, like I took my shirt off one day. I was lying on the couch and I just literally couldn't look at myself. I was like actually disgusted with myself. And I just had this moment. I'm just like looking at this and I'm like, is this all I'm worth? Because I'd gone on a whole different place of where I was like, I'm putting all my value and all my work into just kind of shining the shell, right? Help people lose some weight. Like, but that's it. It wasn't like there was no soul, there was no substance to the work that I was putting in. And I had definitely taken a big left turn on that after my father had gotten cancer and nearly passed. And here I was now confronted with my own physical less than well-being, and like not being okay with myself on the inside at the same time. So it started this new conversation. Every Sunday I would just like lie there butt naked and just like deal with it and just look at myself. And I would start a conversation with myself like, your worth is not just your flesh. And I would have to say like something nice about myself. So this became a real practice. And then I also did this with my wife. She's a teacher, so I'm not going to go too far into all the other stuff with it. But it became this really amazing practice. Well, most people think, oh, you just like, hey, you're spending naked time with your wife and da 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 da. It's like, it was much more than that. It came down to this ritual of no matter how we were feeling, whether she, feeling bloated or feeling gross or whatever it was, we had to not only be okay with ourselves, like, okay, I'm bringing more to this world than just this skin and flesh, but I need to be there for this other person. I'm going to accept my other half for who they are as well. Now, on the flip side, this also started to create a really interesting reflection as well for like my own behavioral work, right? Because now if I'm like, I would just look at this, I would actually stare the problem in the face. Well, if I don't like what I'm staring back at, right? Whether it's my love handles coming in or whatever it is, well, now I had like it wasn't mystified anymore. I was like, I couldn't say like, no, I can't see it. It's there. It's staring me in the face. Let me pay attention to what my behaviors were leading up to this in the past week, or past 2 weeks, past 3 weeks. And it became this almost like a journaling opportunity, a moment for me to just pause, deal with it, take the emotion out of the thing, not saying like, you're not a bad person. This just happens to be where you're at right now. You made some decisions. Now, if you don't like the end result of that, here's your opportunity to change that. Right. So it killed two birds with one stone. One, it was a practice in a lot of self-love and being okay with who I was, whether I liked the exterior or not. Then became a practice with my wife of, no, I really love you for you. The two of us we love just like, we use the stress eating and let's have a bottle of wine on a Friday and then a Saturday night as well as like an excuse to like, oh, whatever, just hanging out with each other, as opposed to using some other type of healthy means to interact and engage. So we now had this opportunity. And then it also served as a means for me to stay on track with getting back into making health a priority for myself again, because I had forgotten that like this is important just as much as, mental health and all that was important to me. Also being physically in alignment with, I have this one body. This is something I need to respect. This is something I need to take care of. If I want to be clear of mind, if I want to be able to give my clients and my staff the best of me, I need to make sure that I make my health and my wellness a priority. So it's time for me to get back on track with that. So it started this at least year long, maybe a little longer now, journey back towards taking care of my physical health and wellness while still bolstering the substance and the soul behind it. Whereas previous in my life, it was just like, plug me into the system and I'm going to lift a bunch of weights and I'm just going to shine the exterior. And there was nothing on the inside that was really driving it. There was not this complete act of self-love to go with it, as well as a complete act of love of the other people that were sharing the journey with me. So Naked Sunday is very near and dear to my heart because I mean, aside from the fringe benefits that came from this, right? Because my wife and I were being open, we were having these real deep, intimate conversations. It was not about being physically naked with each other. It was about sharing this time, both like, I mean, if you ever just spent time butt naked, I like to actually put it this way. Have you ever had to try have an argument with your significant other while you're butt naked? It's not actually a very easy thing because you're just like, your emotions are all over the place. You're trying to just like get your point across, and like they're coming back at you with their stuff, and it's actually very difficult. But it's again this idea of not only are you going to be you're going to be completely vulnerable, both no longer shielded by clothes. You can't be all primped and pressed and anything like this. Just this is me. This is real. This is from the inside out. I'm giving you everything of me. Take me as you will. I am here to get better, and I want the same thing for you. Um, and I would, standing here a year later, my wife and I have gone through some hard things together. Um, and even, especially going through COVID and lots of changes within business and everything else, standing by me as, I reached out to you and started to nurture our relationship again. It became something that was really, really powerful for the two of us to grow, not only as individuals, but as a couple. So.
No, I
Yeah.
think that it's a great explanation of it, first of all. And much like you, I remember early on in the relationship with Roz, and probably something I've said to a few other girlfriends over the years is like, hey, if we're fighting, let's just get naked. And it was for that same reason. It's like, you can't really fight. Like, first of all, I don't care how mad I am at you. If you get naked, my brain makes a very quick switch. It goes from angry to I want to have sex with this person. Like, it doesn't matter what you've done. And funny, I don't remember what we were fighting about. What I do remember the one time we were arguing about something, probably silly, and Roz just started to get undressed. I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm getting like, "What are you doing right now?" She's like, "I'm getting naked," and I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Because that's our rule." I was like, "All right, well, this argument's over." So it it's definitely helpful from that. My first question to you about it. So you said one day you're kind of laying there naked, on a Sunday, looking at your body. What, well, before Lexi gets involved, I'm assuming it's kind of like this is the first time you're doing it. What was one of the first changes you made?
From the actual day, like just reflecting on it, or
Yeah,
during?
you're looking at yourself naked, because I'm a firm believer in that, and maybe it's just my biasy towards the health and wellness space, but I think it's very hard for someone to be internally healthy, mentally strong, etc., when what they're seeing in the mirror every day doesn't make them happy. And that, is different. For you and me, it's like if I don't see a six pack, I'm unhappy,
Right.
right? For some people, it's so long as I'm not 20 pounds overweight, I'm happy. And I don't think there's a right or wrong for that. Everyone can have their own perception of themselves, and they should. And that's all that should make them happy, not what I think of how you look, but what you think of how you look. But when you say you saw yourself, you got back from your honeymoon, you're pushing 210, so 30 to 40 pounds overweight, what was the first step you took to rectify that?
A lot of it, the first stuff was addressing my internal dialogue. That was the first thing where in the past, I really leaned on like intense exercise, the CrossFit culture that, I was part of is like, like I liked competitive athletics. It was just like to push myself. And, I'm sure you remember some of the times training with myself, like I was pretty nasty to myself and just even like, don't be a pussy and things like that. Just the words I would use upon myself were just very demeaning. And like, I could take it, right? Because I played college or probably played high school football, and like that's just the way it is, like be a man, that kind of thing. So really what I wanted to start doing was taking my own advice that I was giving my clients at the time. It's like, what would you tell somebody you cared about? It's like, all right, here's what happened. And it was just more empathy and understanding. So that was the first thing that I did. I really just started reflecting on, well, why was I leaning on food and drink right now as part of this thing? And it really just came down to, I was just like super uncomfortable with myself. Like, this sensitive side of Caleb, is this worthwhile? You know, coming from a background where especially worried about, you know, what I was looking at a lot at the time was, and you just brought it up, like some people being 20 pounds overweight is like their threshold. For me, it's, well, I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, whatever you want to call it. The bar for me is quote unquote different, right? Because everybody on who's a trainer online has 6-pack abs and super lean. And for me to be worth anything, I need to be that. So of course it was just like this, the comparison stuff. I needed to stop the comparison. Um, and a lot of it was just sitting down, like, what do I value about myself? Do I value that I am a good listener? Do I value that I'm willing to sit there and ask people hard questions about, you know, what they care about in their life and what really matters the most to them? And as I started to whittle away at those things, it became quite apparent that I had not a super great relationship with just food and with exercise in general at that time. It was more like a chore as opposed to something that I would genuinely enjoy. So I needed to unravel some of those things.
But
And
let me stop you for a second. One thing you said that I think a lot of people need to hear is we're so much harsher on ourselves. Like I remember those days. Like, you know, you came into Albany CrossFit and you were younger, fitter, you know, you had a six pack in the times when I was chubby, but you remember as well as I do, I used to beat you 9 out of 10 workouts. And
yep,
it had nothing to do with my fitness ability. It had everything to do with your negative self-talk. If I would, we could be doing a 20-minute AMRAP where you're winning for the first 17 minutes, but as soon as I got one rep ahead, you imploded. And and you would say, like you just said, don't be a pussy. Isn't it? I think for so many people listening, the way we talk to ourselves is so much different than we would talk to our mom or a client. And even, and then it blurs too. Like I know there are times the way I speak to Roz is like I would never, I'm not mean to her. I hope not. I'm not like verbally abusive, but you say things that you're just like you wouldn't say that to a stranger. And I think it needs to start from the inside. Like you need to talk to yourself as empathetically and compassionately as you're talking to your clients. You would never, there's no client, maybe once in a while you'd have a tough dude and at the right moment you throw out there, don't be a pussy. Like, maybe, right?
those were my younger self, probably. Yeah,
Far and few. Sometimes, remember when we would coach Austin and he would want that, for example.
right. There's
But
certain people you're trying to, well, that's always, people need to always remember, like, that's contextual. Those
exactly.
experiments, and like, can you deal with just negative, can you, he was hyper competitive. He was like trying to be at the super top, which is at that point, you're looking at like different margins of like excellence. So that's making sure people,
Sure.
those are different types of things. Yes.
And even in this culture, like whether it's the David Goggins of the world, where it's like, don't be a pussy, be a man, be tough. And I think there's a time and a place to talk to yourself like that. But I'd like to think about it more of, talk to yourself the way you would talk to your clients. And also, something we learned from Greg Amundsen was talk to yourself in that positive text, positive tense, right? So he uses the example of um, a marathon runner repeating to themselves, "Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop." 50% of the word they're saying are stop
Yep.
versus keep going. Where it's even those little things, and that was something I remember when we took his seminar years ago, probably 10 plus years ago now, that I've really, it resonated with me, and how I try to talk to myself and also my clients. And I think we'll touch on this probably in every episode. We fall back. Like I'm not perfect. I will call myself, derogatory names at times.
Mm-hmm.
And but very quickly, I think for anyone in this world, it's not a matter of how many times you do the wrong thing, it's how many times you correct that thing.
Right. And I think that's where eventually the exploration led to. It's like, well, why the hell do I even do this in the first place? And around that time, I was starting to watch some other videos. Or there's like a documentary called The Mask We Wear, which is a lot on like masculinity and what does it mean to be a man and all those other things. Right. Again, clearly I'm like in my late 20s, early 30s, just going through this existential spiritual quest, and you start to look back on like what was part of my upbringing. That became part of the forgiveness process, not only of, hey, you don't have to be perfect, but also be pretty forgiving of the people in your past that maybe you're holding grudges against, maybe you're angry against something that, it started to change my mind around a lot of that, being like, the second I assume people were doing the best with what they have at that time, with the information present to them, like, if I was in their position, I might start making the same decision. So piece by piece, I started like offloading frustration, anger, and all these other things, all these other burdens that I didn't even realize I was carrying. I was like, no wonder I'm stressed out. And at the point where like the only good option seems to be, well, you're going to go crush, epic amounts of sushi and then ice cream and then a bottle of wine on a Saturday and then a Sunday, just because you can and nobody's there to tell you no. Like, these are the reasons why you're getting to this point, because you already were stressed, and then you had these other stressors that were just like sinking below the surface, and you're still not even being nice to yourself on top of that. So it was addressing all these different factors, and you're bringing up something really important. Like, a lot of people are just not, they're already talking negatively to themselves, trying to motivate themselves at the same time, but half the battle is stop using the negative thing that you wanted to talk about in the first place. Just like, go forgive it. It's change the, like, from the negative to the affirmative, and all, like, half your battle is done now. So um
Well, I think in addition to that, that negative talk, and something I fall guilty into all the time, even something recently that we were talking about yesterday of guitar, right? It's like, okay, you've made up your mind, whether it's I'm 210 and I need to get back into better condition, or I want to pick up a hobby. And then it becomes, wow, this shit is daunting.
yeah,
Like, wait, I need to drop 40 pounds, or wait, I need to learn how to play a new musical instrument. And it's like, what's the first thing that goes through my head? I can't do that. And then B, even if I decide I want to, it's like, where do I begin? And I think what we've become better at least, still a work in progress, is just like this podcast. Like, take the first step. Like, you need to do a small step instead of looking at it like, I'm sure deep down you knew, okay, my fighting weight is 170. I want to be 170. But if you would have thought to yourself that day, I need to lose 40 pounds, you'd probably still be 210, if not 220. You must have then, what was physically, what was your first step?
physically was going back to really just the basics. Like, at the end of the day, what I was leading up to that, I've still like been searching to that point, like, what's the best, right? Because I'm waiting for somebody else to tell me what the best version of whatever diet is, right? And we'd, in our days at Albany, it was a lot of like the dogmas of, oh, the paleo diet, this is right and wrong, the zone is right and wrong, all those kinds of things. It was starting to break some of those beliefs. Like, well, what is the, I had to explore what were the common underlying factors at first for me, and what were the things that worked well for me. So it was the simple things of drink more water, eat more lean protein, have more vegetables, and just like slowly eating and taking my time with that, and just making a plan. So those are my first things, just going through my week that way. And the other struggle, or the other tactic that I used, was just being okay with going like 50 to 70% effort in all my workouts. And that's where I started. It was just, it was more about showing up as opposed to hitting any like bar for whatever workout was supposed to be, because I had in the back of my mind 25-year-old Caleb who could run through a brick wall, and 31, 32, 33-year-old Caleb who still has like lingering knee issues and his joints feel super swollen, and he's carrying an extra 12, well, 30 to 40 pounds. So like, breaking like this, you're a different person now. What would you tell all those people? So it was, go back to the basics, drink more water, eat more lean protein, have more vegetables, move a little more frequently, but it's not about doing a lot of it, and being mindful during the process. Um, those were the two big physical steps that I made. It was just be mindful around these practices. Um, some of the I still incorporated in the a year ago, like a couple times throughout the year. I did a couple more extreme fashions, but I wouldn't look at that more as like a extreme physical task. It was more like a spiritual exploration. I've done two in the past year. I did two 7-day water fasts, which were more about, well, one was before I got married, and then after that was going into the new year. Which again, if anybody's going to ever explore something like that, I would not do it for physical reasons. I would do it. There better be something of more substance underneath it.
Yeah,
Um,
or else you're not going to make it.
well, not even so much you're going to make it like you're going to put all the weight back on. Like I lost 14 pounds during my first time doing it. And I also lost 14 pounds the second time I did it. The first time I did it, my mom was, I talked to her halfway through because she more or less like talked to me. It's like during her time in her spiritual journeys, she has done several 7-day water fasts, and she's like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. And she's like, just so you know, you're going to put it all back on. That pissed me off to no avail. I explored some of that relationship as well, and she was right. The first one, I put it all back on. The second one was more, there was something different. I was like, why am I doing this in the first place, and what is this leading towards? The other one was trying to get my head straight before actually getting married, and then the next one was more about like, well, where's my life going right now? And that was far more productive because it was more about moving my needle forward as opposed to, okay, I'm just preparing myself for this union. um,
Well, and going back to what you said, for people listening, it wasn't like you woke up on that Sunday, saw your body, and you're doing a 7-day fast.
no.
You know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have finished it. And, even if you did, it wouldn't have had the same long-term effects on you. If you're going to do something like that, it sounds to me like what you're really saying is know the reason you're doing it, know your why. But
Absolutely.
really, everything else was these little small things, like you said, for someone listening. And it's like, if they are listening to this because they know us from the physical space, the fitness space, what we're telling you is take one small step. And maybe you took a few small steps, but maybe it's, hey, tomorrow I'm going to wake up, and before I do anything else, I'm going to drink 32 ounces of water. Maybe
Yeah.
it's, I'm going to eat 3 servings of fruits and vegetables. The point is, it's like, how you build a house brick by brick. And it's the same thing when it's building your physical body or your emotional body. You can't, if you just try to, throw a roof on the ground, you're not going to have much of a house. You need to create that foundation.
I use those examples all the time with clients. Like, it's the absolute truth. um, and ironically, one of the hacks that I do use is, before I'm allowed to have my coffee, I have 2 big glasses of water every morning. It's something as
Same.
um, for anybody who's watching, like, that's the nature of habit change. And a lot of the times, I don't know, and this is where things like changed for me, especially as I was moving in this direction with my clients. It became pretty easy to get people to lose weight, but I was finding it increasingly difficult for people to keep the weight off, because there was nothing after that. It was like, hey, I came in to just look better naked. Cool, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're at a point, they're like, I need this, but I didn't know what it was supposed to be thereafter. And I didn't start to see what was like really lying under the surface until I came to this point. Like I had said, my father in my late 20s had cancer, and then he had a stroke. And like, I remember going down to the hospital and like feeding him like this shitty little gruel, and like I'm looking in his eyes, and like, man looked dead. And I realized like this was just a reflection of me. I'm like looking at myself. This is Caleb, like, you're dead on the inside. You're not really bringing anything to the table. You're just helping people shine the surface, and you need to do something more. And this is, again, like this bigger exploration of like the mental health and the, again, I'm not like some licensed therapist or something like that, but like the conversations were like, somebody needed to be addressed more than just numbers and like broccoli and chicken. Like, they needed to be given something more, and they needed to be given some more substance. And which, when you start looking at deeper habit change, you have to start looking at your environment. You have to start looking at the people that are in your world. You have to start looking at how you talk to yourself, and you have to start looking at like, well, why did you even come to these realizations in the first place? And now where I sit now, where, again, a lot of my motivation, both wanting to do this individually but also wanting to do this with you, and be able to share a lot of this with our friends, is that I want us to be able to create a space where a lot of people can grow and like find a lot of self-love and be inspired to actually go help other people, because that's what, after you lose the weight, like, isn't that what you should be doing? That's how you're going to bolster the actual habits that actually got you in there in the first place. And I can say that for myself right now. I speak very differently, not only to myself, but to other people. I'm willing to say hard things because I know once they overcome that first obstacle, they're going to be able to, take all those skill sets and all those other things that they've learned along the way. They have this amazing skill set already to begin with, and they have an immense capacity to go help and love other people. That's really what I hope we can create through this, is just some trickle down effect where everybody's going to be able to, whether they go home and they're just a better mother or father or parent or husband, wife, whatever you want to call it, whatever their role is that they are now better at, because whether they lost more weight, they feel better and look better naked, or whatever it is, I hope that we can instill some more of that confidence and be able to change the conversation a little bit.
No,
And just,
I think, like I said earlier, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, especially the people that will be listening to this early on, it's like health and fitness and wellness and their body and how they look in the mirror. That's the foundation. Like if you look at the CrossFit foundations, like nutrition's at the bottom of it. For most of us, it's really hard to be happy. It's really hard to be the best version of you, like you said, regardless of what capacity you need that, without waking up and looking in the mirror and being happy with what you see. But also, to some extent, that's the easiest part. And for most people, they dive into that because it's a whole lot easier to exercise and eat right than to look in the mirror and face your true demons.
yeah.
So, and then to throw on top of that, something you're alluding to, it's like, cool, you got your six pack. I've been there, you've been there. We've helped hundreds of people get there. Now what? Well, cool. Now you have to do this for the rest of your life, or until you right, or until you decide being in shape is no longer important to you, which is, I doubt will ever happen. It may change shapes. At 60, you may not care about the six pack. You just want to be healthy. But, the harder battle now becomes facing those true demons, the vulnerability, the forgiveness, what does this life mean? What am I doing? How do I cultivate, create, and strengthen all of my relationships? So I think really, as we kind of maybe begin to wrap this episode up, that's what this is all about. I'm sure we're going to have tons of health, fitness, and nutrition snippets, information and tips and tactics to be successful there. But really, if that's all you're interested in, there's a whole lot of podcasts out there that are going to be better and more specific to that. Ours are going to be the tougher topics, the ones that maybe there'll be some tears going on. Maybe there'll
I
be
hope.
there's some deep thoughts. So that's what I look forward to, because that's, man, no one's, especially at our age. I'm 42. You're 33.
Yep.
No one talks about that.
It seems like I think that the culture is primed right now for that. In general, I think people they keep hitting the wall of the surface and the material, and then eventually, then they're like, I got to go look for some other answers. And I hope that, if nothing else, these conversations can open the door for somebody else. That's a lot of what I've reflected on. Like you talked about, like we talked about with hobbies, you and I, before we got on this today. I was like, what's a hobby? Well, hobby, when I ask myself, am I going to do anything nowadays? Is like, is this something that I'm willing to just learn and like enjoy for the rest of my life, and like just enjoy the process? And something like this is just going to be an ongoing conversation, whether it's in this format or another, forever. Just because I personally genuinely enjoy it, and I hope that if somebody takes even one lesson away from this every day and can apply it within their relationships, their meaningful relationships, then I would have deemed this adventure a success. And I'm proud that we get to do this together, because it speaks to a lot of our own growth in our own relationship. So it's cool.
Very cool. And yeah, I mean, there are ways we can measure the success of this, but to me, It's, hey, I'm doing something with someone I care about. And if no one listens to this and you and I just become better human beings, that's a success for me. And I really intend to use this podcast as an opportunity to truly enjoy the process. I know in my life, I'm so guilty of like, okay, what's the end goal? What's the end state? What's the final thing I want? Like, I want to be on stage at SPAC performing to 30,000 people, or else me playing guitar is a huge waste of time. But like you said, no, just enjoy the process. Learn what an A chord is. Learn how to play a B minor. That's part of it. Same thing with you and I know I'm quite possibly the worst handy person on this planet, or I should say, least handy person. To the point where I'd be like, you're a close second. Yeah, I mean, I would hire J Fun back in the day to hang up a picture. I couldn't do anything, and for some reason, woodworking has become something where I'm like, I don't care if I'm great. I just want to learn. And it's probably one of the first times in my life where I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy this process and, pick up a new skill for no other reason than wanting to learn a new skill. And I think really what we're talking about are just new skills. I mean, every one of these things, from authenticity to vulnerability to forgiveness, they're all just skills, kind of, like a toolbox. And the toolbox, the arsenal that we're forging, that we're building, is this idea of just being a better human being.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. And it's hard to even just, I don't know if you struggle with it, but like even just the bringing it about what are we bringing to the table here? It's like, oh, I just want to help people become better humans. And then what is that? That's almost like an always moving target. So, um, I've in my own life struggled with like, what do I bring to the world and how do I help it? And that hopefully that this is just moving in the right direction and we can find some better words for that. So, but I'm
Well,
process.
yeah, and no different than coaching, right? You and I remember distinctly the first time Austin coached. I don't know if you remember this. He was teaching the thruster. We might have done Fran. It might have just been another thruster workout. But he's yelling at the members, I should say, hey, if you want to go faster on these thrusters, you got to pull the bar down. You got to come into this squat, and you got to, drive up out of the bottom. And I don't know if you remember, it was back before we expanded. We had just that window into the second room, where the platforms were, and we're watching from the outside. I remember looking at you like, what the fuck is happening? Like, you see Austin coming back from the 2010 CrossFit Games, sixth place, yelling, and I remember it was like Donna, Laura, Diana, all these women in their 50s and 60s, and it was a big open, eye opener that just because you're a great athlete doesn't mean you're a great coach. Turns out all these years later, Austin is one hell of a coach, but I think he learned a lot there. And I think there's a little bit of imposter syndrome going on, right? Like, I'm like, who are we to do this? I listen to people like Malcolm Gladwell. I listen to Joe Rogan. I listen to David Goggins. I listen to all these smart people, but they're just human beings as well. And my point is, for many of them, some of them obviously went through the trenches and came out better on the other side, but we're still in this. And I think that's what makes us good about it. That's what makes us vulnerable. Like, we're going to come on here and talk about things and be like, the next episode, hey, remember I talked about forgiveness? Well, I fucked up and I hate somebody. So I think that's important for us to, like I said, this isn't about the listeners. I hope they can learn from it, because we're just really, at the end of this, two dudes trying to navigate this world and trying to become better at it.
Talking about our feelings, just a couple of dudes being bros and crying, you know.
Yeah, we could change the name of the podcast to two bros crying. But let me ask you this. Let's wrap up this first episode. If someone's listening and they're into it and they're like, all right, I'm in. These guys are, they're real. What would you say would be a good first step for them to do? Would it be, you know, drop trowel, get naked, look in the mirror? Would it be sit with yourself for a minute? Like, let's have one tiny actionable step at the end of every episode.
I really like the minute dosing. I think that's really important because when you can put something into really small, tangible steps, something that's almost laughable, I've found that it's when it's laughable if you didn't do it, you're like, oh my, okay, I'm set up for success. And you know, we could call it the naked minute if you want. And it's more the idea of being naked. So if looking at yourself in the mirror, which I've found like plenty of my clients have not like looked at themselves in the mirror, like actually looked at themselves in the mirror, like getting out of the shower or anything like that for years, take a minute and just like look at yourself. And during that minute, try to say as many nice things about yourself as possible. Now you could be fully clothed, you can be fully naked, you know, one would be scaling up or scaling down. Wherever you're at in that journey right now, just take a minute and just look at yourself and as many nice things as possible in a minute. And it might be the same thing over and over, but just 1 minute about that. Just looking at you and saying something positive. It could be, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be, I'm a kind person. I take care of my friends. It's not about being perfect. It's about practicing saying nice things to yourself, because if you're feeling better about yourself after that minute, you're more likely to make a better decision after that with whatever you're about to do, whether it's a health decision or a work decision or anything like that.
Yeah, like a daily affirmation. And I think you don't have to necessarily start your stopwatch on your phone. You don't have to necessarily be perfect about it, right? But maybe after you get out of a shower, if you want to do it naked, or maybe if you're listening right now and you just pulled into work, listening to the podcast on your drive in, just stop. I love it. Like, say a few nice things about yourself.
Yeah.
Give me. Let's end this. Say something nice about yourself, Caleb.
Me say something nice about myself.
Like, what would be one of the affirmations you would say?
Uh, One of the nice things I would say is I'm proud of how that I feel. I used to be really insecure about feeling more sensitive, right? I have like deep feelings. And as a guy who, most people look at me like, you look like some bro jock, like who the F are you? Felt pretty insecure about having a deep emotional spectrum. And when people like said unkind things about me, like it would hurt. So that was something where I actually practicing being very grateful. Like, hey, you're sensitive, deep feeling man, and that's okay. That'd be a practice that I started for myself. And I still actually work on that one to this day when I'm feeling like, oh, you should be tough and it shouldn't bother you. Like, I work on that first. What about you, man?
I think right now, at least, without really going super deep about it, I would say, I'm proud that we're doing this, in the sense that I think you and I have a lot to offer this world, and I think we're both doing this from a genuine place of like, it's not about fame, it's not about fortune, it's not about anything other than you know learning for ourselves, and hopefully with every episode, if one person listens and makes a change, maybe two, maybe at some point hundreds, you know I feel very proud that we're doing something genuine and with a lot of vulnerability and giving back to the world.
I love it, man. I love it.
All right, well, I think that was about as excellent of a first episode as we could have imagined. You and I, have done many projects together, and I'm really excited about this one. It's the first one that we're doing really with a completely new headspace. So I'm super excited about it.
I'm excited too, man, and I'm proud that we stayed fairly on task with like one subject matter today. So I know that we have a tendency to float between topics. So and I'll be the first one to take the blame on that. I know I can go off on a tangent at the drop of a hat. So yeah, I think this is a really wonderful first step, and I'm just excited to see where this thing goes. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I'm just excited to go on the journey with you and for everybody else who decides to come on the ride with us.
Well, I agree. We did a great job, and let's wrap up this first episode. And I just want to say, I love you, bro. I think it's great to do this again, and I'm really excited.
I love you too, bro. Much love, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast. in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to that bonus episode of Naked Sunday. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to hear more from myself and Caleb, please head over to Naked Sunday on any podcast app and subscribe. That's all we're asking. It was a little bit of a bonus episode. It's a new project we have going, and we were really excited to share it with you. So if you enjoyed it, please let me know too. As always, with anything I do, I really, really, really enjoy feedback from everyone. If you listen, if you just stumbled upon it, if you hated it, whatever it is, I want to hear from you. I can only make things better or stop doing them, quite honestly, when I hear from you guys. So please feel free to hit me up. And like I said, if you enjoyed, go subscribe to the new show, Naked Sunday.